Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. My name is Jarrett Samuels. I'm the host of the podcast. Men, as always, I like to begin by thanking you for checking out today's podcast episode. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, I always appreciate when you leave a comment. Let me know where you're watching from, what stands out to you. And if you're listening online, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, anywhere else, man, I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate the reviews when you share the show. When you get the opportunity, make sure you visit thepursuitofmanliness.com. You can find this podcast episode, the whole catalog of previous podcast episodes. You can learn more about the Herd, our men's retreat, Tribe Builder, and Tribe. Currently, the registration for Tribe 15 is open and will run until the middle of November. Visit the gear store. Click on Tribe 15, not Tribe Builder, not anything else, Tribe 15. That way you know where you're at, and you can find out a whole bunch of information. Men, I also want to remind you, this podcast episode is sponsored by Dark Water Woodwork, darkwaterkc.com. Doug Cole has been a long-time sponsor to this podcast, and just recently, he has a new beard oil release. It is called Autumn Spice, not pumpkin spice, Autumn Spice, and as Doug would say, get you some. So if you go to his website, you check out what he has available. These seasonal drops and things that he places throughout the year are only here for a limited time. So use the discount code in the show notes. You'll save money on your order. Men, it's time for today's podcast conversation.
God, I thank you for today. I thank you, as we always do, for technology. It's a good, humbling experience to try to figure out some of these things, but here we are. God, I pray for Kevin. Thank you for him. Thank you for the time he's made to be on this conversation and the story that you're telling to him and through him. And look forward to seeing how this unfolds in the next little bit here. I got to pray for those guys that are listening in all different parts of the country, the world. They're walking their dogs, driving their trucks, sitting at home, God, in all different walks of life. And I pray as we hear Kevin share his story and talk about his friends and all the things that have happened here, God, that we would consider where are we at with this? What part do we play, and how maybe we could be this for someone else, and also the times that we need to ask for help, or we need to ask better questions or more intentional questions to let people just know where we're at. God, thank you for this conversation. Thank you for Kevin. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Well, men, this time I'm going to welcome Mr. Kevan Chandler to the podcast. Kevin, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Kevin, I got your book, know a little bit about your story. Would you just take a moment, introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. As Jarrett said, my name is Kevin, and I'm 38 years old. I live in Fort Wayne, Indiana, not far from Jarrett, and I have a disease called Spinal Muscular Atrophy, which the way that I like to describe it, I don't know if it's politically correct or even medically correct, but I like to say that the message between my brain and my spinal cord gets kind of glitchy. So messages to my muscles kind of get messed up along the way. And so I've spent my whole life in a wheelchair, and I come from a really creative home. My sister is also in a wheelchair, and we just grew up dreaming and then acting on those dreams as best we could, and not letting the expected limitations slow us down or anything. And so what that translated into as an adult, and we can get more into this in our conversation, I'm sure, but what that translated into as an adult was inviting my friends into my life and my disability, my needs, and doing some pretty crazy stuff together over the years. And primarily the big one that I like to talk about is going to Europe in 2016, leaving my wheelchair at home, and these guys put me in a backpack on their back, and 4 guys took turns carrying me for 3 weeks. And we just got to see the world in a way that I never imagined I could, but it was really amazing. And so that's opened up all kinds of great doors to serve other families with disabilities and continue to have adventures with my friends.
So let's go. I love that. As a matter of fact, I was in a meeting with some people before I came here, and I was telling them who I was going to interview and stuff. And I pulled up a picture, and I was like, "No, I'm trying to describe your book, and I didn't want to I'm not going to give too much away now, but I was showing an image of 2016, and that's you talk about having skin in the game on both ends and a tremendous amount of trust. But I don't want to get into that. You say you're from a creative home. At what point did you and your sister, or maybe your parents, whatever, say, "Hey, limitations, we just got some opportunities here. We're going to dream big"? What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you would say that I'm the youngest of three. We have an older brother as well, and I guess you would say that they figured that out before I came along. So so that was helpful. I just got to step into it. But my dad was an airplane mechanic. He's retired now, and my mom is just a really creative and kind of spunky, fiery person, and my brother grew up to be a cartoonist. My sister has 2 degrees, and one in teaching and the other in ministry, and so just a very driving, family, and always looking at what you want to do and what you're able to, and finding ways to break through the ladder. And so I remember a few years ago when I started getting to come alongside other families with disabilities, and some of the situations were really overwhelming to me because of choices that the parents were making, and just seeing ways that their lives were difficult, and in ways that I didn't experience growing up, and a lot of isolation and things like that, and anxiety, things like that. And so I remember sitting on my parents' deck with both of them, with my mom and dad, and I said, how did you guys handle this? What did it look like? And something my mom said stuck with me, as she said, well, when Connie, my sister, was born and she was diagnosed, mom said, we decided that we were just gonna raise her as normal as possible. And we knew that would take some extra effort on our part, but that wasn't a bad thing. And then also when she was diagnosed, the doctors told my parents, well, if you have more kids, it's going to be the same story. They're going to more than likely have the same disease. And my dad told the doctors, if the worst thing that can happen is that we're going to have another child like Connie, that's okay with us. And about a year and a half later, I showed up. And so, growing up, I mean, we had an open door policy in our home, whether it was our friends or our parents' friends, just constantly coming around the house. And that way, I think that was a really cool experience, because people on the outside could come in and see what our lives looked like on a daily basis. And so it kind of normalized the situation for them. But then my parents also, as I said, it took more effort for them, but they really put us out into the able-bodied world around us. I grew up in a kind of a small town in North Carolina. It was actually called Welcome. And there was a sign that said "Welcome to Welcome, a friendly place." And so it was a really small town, which meant you knew everybody, and so they knew you. And I think that was a good place to experiment with this idea. And so we were part of a church, and part of I went to school and was in the regular normal classroom with the other students. I played soccer as a kid until the boys got too big, and if they ran into me, it might be catastrophic. But up until then, my dad put a metal plate on the front of my chair to hit the ball, and played soccer with the other kids, and went on field trips, played t-ball in youth group. Went to summer camps, and that, of course, the only difference was my dad was there to help me with the bathroom and get me ready for bed. It it took a lot more work, but it meant that we were a part of the world around us, and that helped not only the world acclimate to us, but us acclimate also to the world, and not have this mindset of here's my comfort zone, here's my bubble, and the world needs to adjust to that. It was more like, well, what do I need to work harder at or sacrifice in order to be a part of this thing? And so it really created this mindset of a two-way street of accessibility.
Well, it sounds like your parents are incredible human beings. Do all that.
I think so.
Well, of course, yeah, yeah. But not everybody listening would have a scenario where, as you said, counseling some of these other people, they did not have that same experience, and we all have varying forms of anxiety and concerns if whether we'll fit in or if we're good enough or whatever that is. Um, were there any scenarios that maybe your parents were encouraging you to do and you just thought, I don't want to do that? Like they knew it was better for you to do that? Does that make sense?
It does. Gosh, I would have to think about that. I was being the youngest, I was kind of always the wild child,
Okay.
always wanted to go out and do stuff. But but I think there were things I don't know if this is quite the answer that you're looking for, but I think as I got older, there were situations kind of on the other end of it where I realized, oh, I'm going to be moving out on my own, so I need to handle the insurance and the medical stuff, which I think every kid experiences. But for me, it's something that my parents had been doing pretty intensively my whole life. I would say behind closed doors, but I could usually hear the the phone calls or be at the doctor's office. But growing up, there were doctor's visits and X-rays and pulmonologists and therapists. And as I got older, there was kind of this transition of like, okay, Kevin, you're going to need to do these on your own, but also we don't want everything that we've raised you for to go to the wayside. We don't want you to become fixated on the medical. We want you to be able to manage it while also, making relationship and friendship and living life to the fullest still your primary focus, because it's easy to pendulum swing one to the other.
In a moment's notice.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's a point where you say, well, I'd like to travel the world. I think we all would. But one of the things you said that was probably unfamiliar to some men is you had some friends that were willing to go with you. So let's start with that. You decide 2016, I want to take a trip. Just tell us how this unfolds.
Yeah. So to back up a little bit, give a little Lord of the Rings, prologue. We I grew up in this open door policy kind of home, and so in college and after college, when I was living with friends, I just continued that. It was just kind of a natural flow, and so I had a lot of friends that were coming in and taking care of me throughout the day and throughout the week. I probably had 15, 20 guys that were rotating through, getting me up in the morning, staying over at night, popping in during the day, that kind of thing. And so all my friends were learning how to take care of me. And while that was going on, I also became part of this like Monday night potluck group. Just a bunch of post-college kids that were hungry and could share their food with each other and play music. And so it was a couple of guys from that I started having a conversation with, because many of those potluck meetings, they were at different people's houses, and a lot of those houses were not wheelchair accessible. They'd be in an apartment up 2 flights of stairs and that kind of thing. So we would very often leave my wheelchair behind. And the conversation became, well, we already do this a little bit. What if we really intentionally did something without my wheelchair? And Tom, who is in some ways kind of the main character of the book, and this my story. He was always the one. Spoiler alert: he's always the one that gets us into trouble. But he's the tall one with the beard. And he said, "Well, I've always wanted to explore the sewers. So what if we do that?" And so we made up a backpack, very rudimentary. I mean, he used like a hiking backpack frame, the metal frame, set it on the coffee table, laid me on top of it, and then just used a couple of hammocks and wrapped me up in it like a cocoon. And we spent a couple hours one Friday night or Saturday night just hiking around in the sewers under our college. And from there came the question of, well, we survived that. What else can we do? And so about a year later, we headed off to Europe with a much better designed backpack, something that could last more than a couple hours, and a great team of guys and a couple of guys to film it as well, because we knew if we were doing something this crazy, we had to have proof of it.
I say that like the video picture stuff, to me, it's not necessarily brag. Like I'm not after the brag. What I'm trying to do is bring people into the conversation. Like we did this, you could do this too. So every once in a while I'm in something, Kevin, and I say it all the time at church, but in things I'll be like, I can't believe God lets us do this. As you're on this trip, is that going through your mind? Like, I can't believe I get to do this.
Oh man. Yeah, I would say it was constantly on my mind, and it still is. I mean, the families that we get to interact with now and the things that we get to do, I very often just stop and say, how did we get here? It couldn't be anything but the Lord. And I think I can say that for the big high flying adventure moments, but also for those quiet moments of standing. I remember standing out on a dock in Wales, like in the middle of the night, because we just we couldn't sleep. Our time zones were all kind of screwed up, and so we all just got dinner and then walked down to a pier, a dock in Wales one night, and it was quiet, and there were a few hundred boats out on the water, and it was moments like that too that I'm just looking around at this group of friends and saying, wow, like, God, you actually let this happen, and you let these friendships happen and this adventure happen and these quiet moments happen. And I think it's all part of the bigger story. I'm thankful to be a part of it.
You already know this, but this to me goes to Mark 2, the friends who, cut the hole and get their friends to Jesus. And we all talk about that. You actually, you're living that. Like they're literally, like the pictures, they're literally carrying you to these places. And in many, like it's a twofold thing. Like you got to be an inspiration to them, and they're an inspiration to you. And so you're kind of kindling each other's fire, as you're doing this. Was there a place or two that you visited? I know Wales, obviously, but a place or two you visited that you say that one was a bit more of a challenge than we anticipated before we took off there?
Yeah. It's funny with the friends lowering the man through the roof. I've never been lowered through a roof, but I have gone up on a catwalk above a church auditorium. So I've gone, which I guess we had to come down. I don't remember that part as well, but yeah, it's very true. I mean, I get to experience being brought to the feet of Jesus, not just on these big trips, but every morning when a friend comes and gets me up, I get to be brought to the feet of Jesus. And I hope by their bringing me to Jesus, that means they're also coming to Jesus. I think that's something that is, kind of read between the lines and maybe missed a lot in that story, is that because these friends hauled their friend up on a roof and lowered him down, that means they were just a few feet away as well. and they got to hear the words of Jesus and experience that miracle as well. And so that's my prayer, is that that my friends, through our interaction, through them meeting my needs, their needs are also met, especially spiritually and emotionally. And so yeah, to what you were saying, or what you're asking, I feel like I had a responsibility to keep an eye on these guys and make sure that they were taken care of, that we weren't pushing too hard physically or emotionally, and I could kind of be the captain in a way, in that sense. And I could do that because my needs were being met. And so I didn't have to worry about myself. I didn't have to advocate for Kevin. I got to advocate for Tom and Ben and Robbie and Philip and Luke and Jameson. And so I think there were a few times, especially on the trip to Europe, that were physically pretty challenging. Skellig Michael, at the end of the trip, we hike up this mountain in the middle of the ocean. It was, I think it's like 600 steps made of old stone. They're kind of shaky and narrow, and definitely a lot of potential to fall off. And yet we didn't, but it was a lot of work. And I had sprained my ankle a few days before, and my feet are strapped to the guy's hips. So every time they raised their right leg up to the next step, I felt the reminder of how hard the work can be sometimes, feeling the strain of that pain. And so that was really difficult. But I think too, probably the hardest moment for me on that trip had nothing to do with the physicality. It was all internal, because it started raining. We were in Paris, and sorry, I'm all over the map here, but but that's how the trip was. But we were in Paris, and it started raining, so we ducked into an old giant church, and this lady in broken English wanted to pray over me for healing, and actually kept coming back to us and pursuing us. And it was really heartbreaking, because I felt like she was missing the forest for the trees. I think up to that point I had been on this high of look, my friends and I have overcome my disability, and the whole world sees it, and this is great, and everybody's high-fiving us down the street. And then we get to this place where this person is not, they're saying it's not enough, and that was really heartbreaking, and really messed with my head for a bit. And two things happened that really brought me back. One was, as soon as it took a while, because they were caught off guard as well. They didn't realize the depth of what was happening. But as soon as the guys did realize what was going on, they went into SEAL Team 6, just mode, and got us out of that church and back into the rain and on the subway. And it was like, wow, these guys see it, and they care about me. And so the way that they cared for me in that moment was really awesome. I mean, the way they got us out there was hardcore. And then the other aspect of that was on the ride home, just processing it and kind of wrestling it out with the Lord. I was reminded of a verse in First Peter, actually, which is sitting right here, because I was reading it the other day again. And it talks about the outcome of your faith. And because the lady, again, in broken English, was kind of implying that I was disabled because I didn't have enough faith to be healed. And in First Peter, about halfway through chapter 1, Peter refers to the outcome of your faith And then he says that that is the salvation of your soul. And realizing that, God can do what he's going to do. He can heal you if he wants to heal you. And I think we are called to have faith in things like that. But our, our, our faith, at the end of the day, it leads to our salvation. It's you don't have faith in order to make money or be healed or get a girlfriend. It's you have faith that God's gonna save you from your sins. And so I was just that brought so much comfort to me in that night, and remembering, oh right, that's where my identity is. Paul says that our adoption as sons of God is a redemption of our bodies. So just thankful that he reminds me of that over and over through friendships and through my relationship with him.
Yeah, that verse I looked up as you're saying, it's 1 Peter 1:9, talking about that. And then I think of John 9:3, where they said, okay, who sinned? Was it Kevan or his parents? Like, nope, that's not how this works. That's not how this is, for the glory of God. And so telling your story is for the glory of God. God will get his glory. He does that through Jesus, Kevin, I do want to hit on the book. I'm not in the business of reading children's books, but my wife is. She's a kindergarten teacher, so she loves all kinds of. This is an incredible book. You wrote it, is that correct?
Yeah, I wrote it with the help of a friend who does a lot of children's book writing. So I'm not in the business of writing children's books, but where you and I can hang out. But I had a friend that was able to guide me and kind of coach me through it. Yeah.
Two things I've never done: talk children's books or WNBA with a guest, but we've done both before we got to this point. I'm curious. I think you said you had a brother who did cartoons and stuff. Is this Natalie Pearson connected to your brother at all, or is this a different person?
Yeah, no, not
Okay.
Connected at all. Yeah.
This is phenomenal. I don't know who Natalie Peterson is, but I have a hunch this is not her first book that she has illustrated.
So it actually is her first book, but she is I know, it's crazy. It blows me away every time I see it, but she is she got an animation degree and is a background painter on the show The Wing Feather Saga from Angel Studios. And so that's I just think she brought a lot of, we wanted someone that would think outside the box with children's books, and I feel like she did that. She gave us something really beautiful and whimsical, and I just love it.
It's incredible. It is incredible. One page, I don't know where it's at. I think it's you guys walking out of a house. It may be supposed to be your house. I don't know. It says, "Trust us," said Tom. Well, first of all, if you go hiking with a man with a beard, you're going to be in good shape, Kevin. No question about that. But
that's
trust
my
us, said
experience.
Tom. You agree?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
far.
I love this part. It's simple. Trust us, said Tom, and Kevin did. I think that's a summation of this trip, but it's also a summation of good, sound biblical friendship, that your friends should be able to trust you and you should trust them. And that's the power of the shared experience of when we get together and do these things.
Yeah. That's been the really the crux of that book for us as we've shared it with families. We originally put together this children's book because I do have, I guess, what we now call a grown-up book, a memoir about our trip to Europe, and we've shared that with families and with people, and yet it always kind of bothered me a little bit that we have about 1,200 families in the world that have our backpack now and use it in 48 countries. And what kind of was unsettled in me was that I had my story in a book, but about 95% of the people actually inside the backpack couldn't read it. They were too young. They were, they were just little kids. And so I wanted to provide this story in a form that they could really take as their own. And so we made the book originally to include in every backpack and send out. But as the book came together, just as you just said, that it's really a story of friendship and trust. And trusting others and being trustworthy, and the amazing things that can lead to. And so we decided to make it available to the rest of the world as a result.
So if somebody wanted to know more about you, the book, the backpack, where would you send them?
Yeah, you can check us out at wecarrykevan.org. And from there, you can get to all of our social media outlets, or just look us up at We Carry Kevan and any social media. We have a YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, all that jazz. And also on our website, you can find out where I'll be speaking. We've got a blog that I write, and then a blog about the various families that have our backpack, and they send us stories, so we share them there. And we also have a place for crowdfunding for families to get backpacks. So you can go on there and see who's wanting to get a backpack and give to those as well. And if you do that, once they get their backpack, you can once they get the backpack and they send us photos or videos or updates, you get those as well. So it's kind of a fun way to build community.
That is incredible. And man, as I said in the beginning, it's an honor to talk to you. I got a couple more things I want to ask you before we get out of here, but we'll save that with the men in the herd. You guys who are listening to this, the links are in the show notes as usual. Do me a favor, go buy the book, give it to somebody, whether they need a backpack, whatever it is. If you know somebody, buy the book, and it's a powerful story. So thank you, Kevan.
Yeah, thank you.